Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video, we need to talk once more about Hurricane Delta. This should be the final update for Hurricane Delta. This has been just what we've been talking about for over a week now. It's going to be interesting having to talk about something else eventually. Now, before I get started with this video though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather-related content, and also make sure to share this video with your friends, family, and social media. I'd also ask that you check out our very exciting Patreon page in the description and the pinned comment down below. Now, for today's comment of the day, this has been talked about throughout weather communities across the world. Will Delta be retired? And if that does happen, how are they going to handle that? Because that's one of the Greek names. Are they going to replace it? Are they just going to skip it from this point forward? I don't know. What do you think is going to happen? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Now let's get into this video, and first things first, we're taking a look at NOAA's cone forecast here for Hurricane Delta, and as you can see, as of this morning, we have 120 mile per hour winds, which is above Category 3 status. Again, we've expected this one to cross into that major hurricane status once more, at least briefly, and that has gone ahead and occurred. And it's heading straight for western Louisiana, although we knew that at this point. Here in the reds, we have hurricane warnings, and then in the blues, we have tropical storm warnings. So basically, in the blues, you can expect tropical storm impacts, and in the reds, you can expect hurricane impacts. So that's pretty simple. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to move on, and we're just going to take a look at the satellite imagery. We're going to get into that intensity guidance. We're going to just skip spaghetti model guidance because there's not too much fluctuation in where this one can go. We pretty much have that set in stone. We're going to get right into impacts after the intensity guidance. All right, now here we are taking a look at that satellite imagery, and as you can see, it doesn't really have an eye. It's been an odd one, to say the least. It's tried to develop an eye at some points, but for how strong it's been a Category 4 without an eye. It's really struggling to get that really strong structure, and I would make the argument that if it did get that structure, that really defined eye, I think it would have been a lot stronger, and it would have held up better against the shear and dry air at points, in the cold waters too. But you know, it is what it is, and thankfully it has really been not as bad as it could have been, and really, as it gets closer to the coast, it should become a Category 2 again, hopefully, and we won't see those major hurricane impacts there for Louisiana. We will see major impacts, just not Category 3 major hurricane impacts. So we're going to take a look at the intensity guidance now. As you can see, we're at about a mid-level Category 3 at this point. And we're going to drop off over the next 12 hours, which is about when we're going to start to see, landfall. It's going to slightly drop off. So it's either going to be a very weak Category 3, which doesn't really exist. It's just on the lower end of a Category 3. There's no such thing as a weak Category 3. Or it's going to be a Category 2. And then it's going to significantly drop off after that point because it will be onshore fully. And then it's going to just move north into some of the central regions of the United States, creating some rainfalls, possibly some gusty winds, things of that nature. What we're going to do here is we're going to move on, and we're going to start talking about those wind impacts. We're going to take a look at our HWRF model and take a look at what its forecasted winds are at about landfall. Then we're going to start taking a look at our European model, and then we're going to talk about some other impacts as well. All right, now here we are taking a look at this HWRF model, and I can't be any more impressed by a model. This one has done excellent this year, and it's really what the weather community has needed. We've needed these very high-quality models, especially for hurricanes. I can remember in years past where it seemed like there wasn't any models that you could really rely on, and even all of them would be wrong at certain points with some storms, to the point where it just created so many issues. Even last year was just rough, and this year has been a lot better with the modeling. I'm not going to even lie. Specifically the HWRF model has impressed me, and the European model has had many successes as well with many of these storms. Now, this is for perhaps 2 p.m. or so this afternoon, and you can see it's going to be very close to making landfall with that initial eye wall. And as you can see, it's expected to have about a 110 mile per hour maximum winds within there. Those reds are indicating 66 to 100 mile per hour winds. So the eye wall is going to have very, very strong winds regardless, but it will be likely below Category 3 status by time it's even approaching landfall. And then by the time we're making landfall, this is maybe 5 or 6 p.m. tonight, and the eye wall is going to be onshore of Louisiana. A lot of those winds there are going to be as low as perhaps 60 to 70 mile per hour winds that are making it well onshore. Right on the coast there, where that very eastern eye wall is bringing the winds right on shore, I do expect that we will see 80 to 100 mile per hour winds initially, which is obviously very bad. So that's going to be the worst place to be out of anywhere. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just move on, and we're going to start talking about our European model. We're going to take a look at the accumulated maximum wind gusts, which is just going to show us our maximum wind gusts at any point during this entire storm for any given location. We're going to take a look at that total wind, and then we're going to start talking about storm surge, when you can expect the winds to move to your area, things of that nature. Now here's that accumulated wind gusts here. Keep in mind this is gusts, but you can really pinpoint how much winds you're expecting for your location based on this map. And again, that very eastern edge is expecting the most, where we're seeing 100, 110 mile per hour wind gusts move onshore there. So that's going to be the worst, and also it's going to have the worst storm surge as well, out of anywhere likely. So that's going to be the highest amount of impacts is right there, where we see those reds really come onshore to Louisiana. As you can see, we dodged a bullet because this storm is going to be weakening as it hits. There's plenty of 130 to 140 mile per hour wind gusts that are going to be about 100 miles offshore of Louisiana, that if this storm wasn't lowering in intensity would have easily made their way onshore. So we really dodged a bullet there. But really, we're going to have quite strong winds making it all the way into northern Louisiana. As you can see, even 70 mile per hour plus wind gusts well up, almost to the Arkansas-Louisiana border. Very, very crazy. Here's the total rainfall map, and it's really just been very consistent with this. Generally, 5 to 10 inches of rain within those brown regions is going to be the theme. Anything in the reds, oranges, blues, greens is under 5 inches of rain, which is what I would consider minor to moderate. The 5 to 10 is when you're starting to take a look at some areas receiving flooding if they're more susceptible to it than others. So you're going to want to look out for that, especially if you know your area does see plenty of flooding and, light amounts of rain. Some areas are much more susceptible than others. If you're up on a hill, it would take a lot. It's almost impossible for your area to flood if you're on a hill. So there's major differences based on just where you're at or where your house is at. Anyway, what we're going to do here is we're going to move on, and we're going to take a look at the most likely arrival time of tropical storm force winds. We're going to take a look at the peak storm surge, NOAA's forecast for the total rainfall, even take a look at the excessive rainfall outlook, and then we're going to get into our official direct weather forecast. Then we're going to close out the video. All right, now first things first, here is our most likely arrival time of tropical storm force winds. And as you can see, those tropical storm force winds are going to make it pretty much by about 2 p.m. are generally going to be onshore to areas like Louisiana, portions of Texas as well. And they're going to be pretty far inland by 8 p.m. The tropical storm force winds are going to be well ahead of the storm, obviously, because it's a very strong storm. It's not just a tropical storm. So that does not mean the landfall is going to be at this time. It's actually just when those outer bands are going to be creating some windier conditions for your area. I hope that makes sense. I don't want anybody to think that this storm is going to hit earlier than it really is. Let's go ahead and take a look at that peak storm surge forecast graphic. And as you can see, generally 7 to 11 feet is expected in that worst region. Again, that's where the worst of the winds are going to be, on the very eastern side of the eye wall. That's going to really help shove the water up inland. Right there, Vermilion Bay, I think is what it's called. So right around that region. Morgan City, right on the very eastern edge of those worst impacts. I expect you could see 4 to 7, possibly, possibly like 6 to 10 feet. So you might get over that, 6 foot mark. But if you're anywhere in eastern Louisiana or perhaps the Mississippi or Alabama coast, you're closer to 2 to 4, maybe 1 to 3 feet. So more of like a minor amounts of storm surge. Same story for Texas there on the very eastern edge. So you are going to get some, but really it's not going to be too much. Even if you're in the very far western regions of Louisiana, you're still expected to get 4 to 7, possibly 5 to 8 feet. So it's still going to be moderate to major storm surge for your region. Now, here is the total rainfall expected by NOAA. And I wanted to show this because they completely agree with the European model and what I've been saying for days now. Really 6 to 10. I would say 5 to 10, but they say 6 to 10. Within that orange region seems to be the really big theme. They do have some sprinkles of just 10 inches plus, which I really agree with. I think there is going to be some scattered or isolated regions that do see over that 5 to 10 inch amount. I think that some areas will probably reach, 10 to 15 inches. It's just going to be pretty isolated. Now, as far as the excessive rainfall outlook, we only actually have a moderate risk here, so 20 to 50% chance of flash flooding. So that's good news that we're not in that high risk area. So there is going to be some regions within there scattered in that are going to see flash flooding, but it's at least not looking like it's going to be widespread. All right, so here's the key messages. Again, I told you guys to read this. I've been saying that for every single video I've made for the past 3 or 4. I highly recommend you pause this video and just read this through. This is basically all the information you would need to know. Also, you can go to the National Hurricane Center website and read more information like this and just see all of their graphics. Extremely useful information, and I highly recommend you use that to seek official guidance. All right, now finally, here's our direct weather forecast, our final direct weather forecast for Hurricane Delta. Again, we've made plenty of these, and it's going to be weird talking about anything else. This is how I felt with Laura. Storms that we talked about for weeks and weeks. It just feels odd when I'm finally going to have to talk about something else. We have 120 mile per hour winds. Our pressure has really dove down 953 millibars. So this is a much lower pressure system at this point. I think we were in the 940s at a certain point. So this one was looking extremely strong. That was as of last night. It's moving north at 12 miles per hour. So it's going to reach shore, obviously, this afternoon or evening. And it's at 26.3 degrees north by 93.7 degrees west at this point. It's going to generally head north through Louisiana and Arkansas, and then it's going to take a little bit of an eastern turn, start to impact states like northern Mississippi, Tennessee, maybe Kentucky as well, with some rainfall and maybe a little bit of windiness there. Anyway, for today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, how many named storms do you think we will see after Delta? And Ryan Vexo said, I would say at least 4 more named storms, Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, and Theta. So yeah, I think 3 or 4 is definitely a very realistic number, and that's going to be obviously more storms we need to talk about. We already have one moving offshore of Africa now, so we know there's a good chance we will at least see one more. It's just absolutely incredible how extremely active this hurricane season has been, and obviously we forecasted this months ago, but it still just feels so surreal looking back at just how many storms we've actually had. Anyway, for today's patron highlight of the day, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel, but especially our Diamond patrons, Alicia Davis, Madbird, Cindy Klein, Dan Hazard, Mark J., alongside our Platinum patrons, Donna Carnes and Larry Lepan. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and social media. I will see you guys in the next video.